everyone. Thank you for joining us again. I'm Michelle.
And I am Sam.
We have this week, because of Marriage Week, been taking time to talk about things that matter to couples. And today we want to talk about this topic of forgiveness.
Yeah, forgiveness is something that is such a significant part of conflict, but just relationships in general. But it's oftentimes misunderstood. I think the church hasn't done a great job at helping us to understand forgiveness. At best, what they've done is they've really over spiritualized it and almost shamed us into thinking that if we are struggling to forgive, that there's something wrong with us and that we should forgive immediately.
Yeah, and I think we want to be able to speak into that a little bit today and really maybe break down a little bit of what forgiveness could look like.
Yeah. So when it comes to granting forgiveness, there are actually three different parts of forgiveness that it entails. For most of us, we think forgiveness is just the act of saying, I forgive you, and that's forgiveness. Actually, there are different parts to this, and it's often neglected. That's why, even though we actually said the words, I forgive you, there's something that happens to us when even after having said it, it just doesn't feel complete. Or when something else happens, we have this like visceral reaction to it, an overreaction to it. So the first part of forgiveness entails grieving, and the significance of really acknowledging the pain that you're feeling because of whatever was happened to us. I think oftentimes we don't give ourselves the right to be angry, the right to feel whatever it is because of our cultural or family of origin, church cultures that said this is not what Christians are supposed to do. But we've been created with emotions, and when we are hurt, we are naturally supposed to feel anger. We're naturally supposed to feel disappointed, the pain that we have, and it's very important to acknowledge, because that's the only way we're going to be able to
really heal.
Yeah, to process it. So that's what grieving really is.
And sometimes I think part of being able to acknowledge, what's happening here allows, not just in the present moment, sometimes we do need to go back to our family of origins. Maybe there's unresolved pain from the past that really needs to be addressed. And so that allows us to delve into that a little bit more.
Okay, so the second part of forgiveness after you have grieved, and by the way, grieving might take a lifetime, but the power that the pain has over you when you have continued to grieve and process that pain in healthy ways is the power is released from you. It has less power over you. And when we have grieved properly, this is when we are able to come to this place where we can utter those words, I forgive you, when we're engaging and choosing to forgive this person. And when those words actually come out, it's difficult, but again, you feel like you are on your way to the fullness of forgiveness.
Yeah. And I think there's a shift that is felt internally, and which brings us to this next point of really being able to release the anger.
Yeah, and the way that I explain this is just as in the beginning we have to really embrace the right to be angry. And the final component of forgiveness is when we make the choice to surrender our right to remain angry, to seek vengeance, to remain bitter. And when we don't do this properly, this is when bitterness and resentment really does settle in. And one of the things that I want to remind all of us, that when we are releasing or surrendering this right to remain angry, we're not just releasing it into the wind. We're really surrendering it into the only person that we can trust, and that's God.
Yeah. After that, this next aspect of forgiveness is when we are actually seeking forgiveness, when we recognize, oh, maybe I'm the one that caused pain in somebody else, and I need to go and say, I own my part. I see what I did. I see how I've hurt you, and I'm really sorry about that. Will you forgive me? Sometimes the expectation is that our partners is going to, or whoever it is that we go to, will say, I really appreciate that. Thank you for owning and for apologizing. It's what I was waiting for, and let's go on our merry way, right? And reconcile. But sometimes it doesn't.
Oftentimes it's not like that.
The one who, as a seeker of forgiveness, you may actually need to be ready and accept that the person that you're apologizing to may need space and time to go through their own process of grieving, of being able to embrace what was just said, and to do the forgiving on their own for, holding on to the hurt and the pain and, the anger as well, and giving them that space and time. Now, there are moments, and, a lot of couples go through times where there's a significant amount of trust that's broken, whether it's with, trust that's fractured through infidelity, through lying, cheating, through addictions, whatever that looks like. And those kinds of scenarios are going to take time. It's not going to be a quick fix, even after, you come to a place of really being sorry for what happened. Some things like that may take a number of years, and you have to be ready to walk down that road.
Yeah, and I learned that the hard way, that some people just generally process, pain like everything else, at different speeds. I tend to process things a lot quicker than Michelle, and in my mind, it just made sense that she would process things the same way that I would do, and then the same speed. And just thinking back to it, how immature I was to think that. We all process things in different ways and different speeds. But the expectation that I had was, here I am, I process, and I'm asking for forgiveness. Let's reconcile, let's make up, and let's move on our merry way. And she just couldn't. I think she wanted to, but she couldn't. And that was an important distinction for me, that I knew that Michelle wanted to, but I needed to give her space to get to a place where she could actually forgive.
Yeah. And you said the word reconcile, and that just reminds me that sometimes there are some relationships that you may need to forgive the other person in, but it may not be safe. Emotionally, physically, mentally, spiritually, sexually, right? When there is abuse there, that's a breach of trust, a significant violation of trust. And so you are not supposed to remain in that space. It's okay to actually say, I forgive this person, but I remove myself from that relationship because it's not safe, it's toxic, and there may not be a reconciliation of that until there may be some significant change in healing on the other person who's taken full ownership and responsibility, and there is a noticing of that change in that person's life.
Yeah, and healing is really at the core of asking for forgiveness. When we are seeking forgiveness because of the things that we have done, we have to understand the person's in pain, and it's going to take time for them to heal. And again, we have to give them that time to actually engage those areas. And it might take a long time, but at the end of the day, this is what part of the consequences of our actions. Now, when it comes to this decision on the other side, where we're withholding forgiveness, and the other person might be struggling, you withhold, you remain bitter and resentful to hurt the other person. And in actuality, the only person you're hurting is yourself. And it is important to engage that pain, to process it, so that the deep healing can begin to happen. We're not talking about complete healing, because unfortunately, complete healing might not happen on this side of heaven. But the movement in healing and the progression there is always hope for healing and restoration, because of the one who is our hope, the one who restores.
Just one last note on this. I think some people might say years down the road, I thought I dealt with this.
Mm.
And you may have, and you may actually have worked hard on it. It's just the fact that sometimes pain is pain.
Yeah.
And it's going to hurt when we think about that moment.
Mm-hmm.
That's the grief part. And part of, I think, knowing have we fully forgiven somebody is when there is no ill that we're holding towards, that we can actually look upon that individual who pained us, who hurt us. And if there's reconciliation, of course, it makes it easier. But when there isn't, to be able to say, I can bless that person. But you can see how that could take time.
Yeah.
And so it's okay to take time, to give time for yourself, the partner, in seeking, granting forgiveness. And again, it's a gift that you can give, especially to your partner, when you're able to do that.
Yeah, for generations to come, because they experience the impact of just holding on to the right to remain angry.
So thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.